Says, well, if mages counter every AD carry by making the lane where you can't interact with them outscale, outdamage, have CC for team and shields, what's the counterplay for someone who plays a marksman? It's probably like adapting your picks, not your marksman picks, by the way, but like adapting like the lane you run against them for starters. Um, support plays, things like that. Um, and yeah, it's like, and it's just like I don't know if like how to describe it. It's like I don't know if a character like Ziggs at 52 in bot lane is just broken in general. It's like he's good against a lot of marksmen. I don't disagree that he can be like rough to play against sometimes. I just think that's like a natural part of like lane counters though. Like I think one thing that marksmen generally don't have to deal with is characters that counter them. They have to deal with it in the game. So what I mean by that is like they have to deal with it like, oh man, this character counters me because I'm squishy and they burst me out. That's what happens. 100% that happens. But like it's a thing where it's like in mid lane, if you play a melee character, it's very likely that your lane opponent locks in a counter to you. If you play a mage, there's a lot of counters for you. I mean, top lane, like the matchup has tons of just counters and counter picks. So AD carries generally over the years have like experienced like very stable lane matchups. Where it's like, hey, I'm an AD carry, you're an AD carry. Now, you know, there are counters down there. Like if I play Jinx and you play Samira Blitzcrank, that's pretty rough, right? But like you're not running into the like as much of like the top laner of like I picked Darius and they picked Quinn or something, right? So yeah. It's kind of a thing where it's like I generally believe that mages in bot lane, when they're like 53% win rate, a lot of mages in bot lane, it's like, well, you're running against characters who are you counter and who aren't used to playing against you, so they're not necessarily going to know what to do to play against you. You're probably running into a Senna when you do it. She's probably paired with that Seraphine, which is pretty rough. And so like if it all washed out, which it won't unfortunately, but if it all washed out and like over time more mages showed up in bot lane, I think like strategies to play against them would develop more naturally. Now that said, I think there are a few things that we did that made it especially hard for marksmen to deal with mages bot lane, which personally I wonder if like we're supposed to revert them. One of the big ones is marksman health regen. So in 8.11, one of the changes we did to make it so marksmen were a lot worse versus mages in bot lane, because the goal of 8.11 was to get mages down there, is we reduced marksman health regen, right? And the result of that change is that marksmen are much less resilient to ranged poke, which is like, guess what that happens? You gapped our knot, GG, Kindred. Well, Kindred, thank you for the thing. I would say I just showed up to Grubs, is what I did. That's what I've been learning, is just go to Grubs at 5 minutes and you win the game. So that was good. But that knot had some good hooks on me in lane. I just I roamed a bit faster. But yeah. Mage's bot have 0 counterplay. I don't necessarily agree with that. I do think that marksmen aren't well suited to beat them though. Which again, it's like, I wonder if we're supposed to give marksmen their health regen back. Because it used to be that like it was actually really rough running mage's bot into a lot of marksmen, because you could cheese them and burst them out, but you weren't very versatile. You run out of mana, sometimes before they would run out of health, things like that. They could auto attack you down. In 8.11, we reduced marksman AD and we reduced marksman health regen, while increasing mage base mana. And so that created a situation where mages can poke you more and you are less resilient to it. So yeah, I'm wondering if mages bot like feel really rough to play against with marksmen. I wonder if the solution isn't to nerf mage's bot, but it's more to like buff the marksman class in certain ways that make them all more resilient to mages. That's what I would that's what I would personally, my personal take would be to do is like, it isn't make Ziggs bad, makes Brand bad, makes Swain bad, makes Seraphine bad, but more like a better equipped marksman to interact with their patterns. Yeah. Wouldn't some marksman go mid then? I mean, it could happen, right? So like, here's what happened. Like, yeah. AD carry doesn't need buffs. They'd be stronger in solo lane. The problem is you can't interact with them in the bot lane, and they outscale. I'm not sure how to ever counter this. Well, mages don't typically outscale. They outscale in certain ways, right? Like, Seraphine outscales because she just becomes an absolute teamfight monster, right? But like, you are giving up a marksman when you're running a mage bot, and that's a big deal in a lot of games. I would say that, like, I think one thing that I wonder about marksman literally right now is if marksman scaling is good enough. Like, you say they don't need buffs, but I get people like coming into this stream every single day saying that crit isn't good enough, right? Like, crit isn't good enough. I don't scale enough. I can't kill tanks. Like, I hear that a lot. I'm not saying that's necessarily true. Again, I'm not the balanced team. I don't have a perfect look at everything going on, but you hear a lot of like, hey, crit isn't functioning in its scaling fantasy. And so it's possible that like, hey, if you're playing those scaling marksmen, maybe you aren't scaling enough.